right, hello folks. Welcome to the first of likely many online kind of interactive courses that we're going to be doing. The first thing I'd like to say is that this is the beginning of a new unit. This is the biology unit. One of the longest units we do. This unit is broken into two parts. I have given you a physical paper copy for now of the first unit. If we need, I will give you the second unit either in a paper format or perhaps all digitally as we go along, depending on what happens. The only thing I've left out of this unit, and pay attention to this, is the microscope section. Because as of right now, I don't think it's a great idea to have people in a lab doing microscopes. And we have a few days left before we're officially dismissed. But I don't want to have people in close quarters. I don't want to have people putting their eyes against the microscopes and in very tight lab environments. So for now, for safety's sake, we're not going to do it. And perhaps if I'm feeling up to it and then we're still using this, I might actually do the microscope lab with you online or for you and show you how to prepare slides and how to do all those kinds of things so you don't miss out, because microscopes are one of the most fun sections of the course. But for now, we're going to do without, and I do have a microscope that can actually project onto the screen, so that could be fun. It might be an interesting way of doing it with you. Now, we're going to start with the first page of the pack, and we're going to do like a very simple lesson today. Today's lesson is, it's just basically remembering 7 things. Let's not kid ourselves. I'm going to go back to the beginning here. How this will work is we will talk about the slides. I'll keep them up here. You also have the book that you can see down here. I have a document camera here, so you can see what I'm doing here if you want. And if on later assignments, we'll be using this a little bit more. And I will be giving you answer keys, and we'll do them together on here later, so you can understand my thinking and how you're supposed to rationally figure out what to do. Now, the first thing to know about this bio unit is that it favors students who prefer, making sure that's working, or are strong at memorizing. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. I try and do some things that are a little more interactive and a little more puzzle-based. But for the most part, you ask any science teacher, biology in general, at every level I've ever taken it, is a lot of memorizing. So if you're great at memorizing and you weren't good at the last things we did, this is going to be a unit for you. If you're not great at memorizing, there's a few things I'd suggest. I'd suggest looking over your notes daily. Just skim it. You don't have to cram every day. But once you see the words and you skim through what you've done and start from the beginning and get as far as you've gone, then a day or two later, start from the beginning, skim through. These questions and words and concepts will become second nature to you. Repetition is key to memorizing if you're not a strong memorizer. Now, the first unit, as I was saying, the first lesson, lesson 1, is what makes something living, also known as characteristics of living things. It's probably what I'm calling this unit right now, or this lesson, excuse me. So, right, that seems pretty obvious, you know, living, not, right? There's a little more to that, and even a single cell represents the characteristics of living things very well. So, me and a cell have a lot in common. It seems a little ridiculous, but it's true. Now, let's go in. At first, the first thing you'll see is a link. Here we go. Right there. Now, you can't click on it because it's on a paper for you, but you could type it in. You could also just type in CK12 characteristics of life, and it's going to come up. Now, let's go to this for a second. Let's just take a look. I'm going to tell you that this has a little bit more information than you're going to even need, but you can give this a good read. Don't get too caught up in the wording and how complicated it is, because on the next slide, I simplify it for you. I tell you the 7 things you're going to need to know. Now, let's think about on a test. How would I ask you to do this? What I would probably say is, what are the 7 characteristics of life? Or name 4 of the 7 characteristics. Or I might say, here's an example of something happening in nature. Which characteristics of living things are we displaying? Or I might say A, B, C, D, which is not a characteristic of living things. Realistically, on this test, this is going to be maybe 4 to 7 marks. It's not going to be a large portion of your test. It's a very easy concept, and we move on to far bigger things, which is why I thought this was a good first unit to kind of start with. So let's look at this CK website. Let's take a look at what's going on here, right? What do bacteria and whales have in common? Well, actually a lot. They're both living. And then we're going to get into the characteristics of life. Here they are, right? They can respond to the environment. Well, what does that mean? Watch this, watch this. Bang! Oh, I responded to the environment, right? That's what that means. It means in a plant's circumstance, maybe a plant leans towards the light. Maybe it opens and closes depending on day or night. Things like that. Responding to environment. Even a plant can respond to its environment. Even a single cell can move or relocate or act certain ways depending on its environment. That is a signature characteristic of life. Growing and change. I think we know what that means, but all living things grow and change. They don't stay stagnant. They are always growing and changing. Another characteristic, reproducing. They have the ability to reproduce. You can read about that. Have a complex chemistry. Yes, in my slide I say that they're made of similar chemicals, and I wrote some of them here, especially carbon. Carbon is the element of life. We'll talk about that later on, trust me. But they're made out of the similar elements. They have a little complex chemistry with a lot in common with each other, right? There's not some living things that are made of gold and nickel and copper, and then some that are made of of oxygen and carbon and nitrogen and phosphate bases and things like that and sugars. No. All living things are made up of basically the same small group of molecules and elements. So they have a lot in common in that level. And we haven't done the chemistry unit, but we will. Maintain homeostasis. Don't worry about that too much. That's not something we're going to talk about right now. But homeostasis means staying normal, right? Your body gets hot, you sweat to cool off. That has kept your body temperature at 1. Same thing if you get a fever, right? You sweat to cool off. Your body is always trying to maintain a certain balance. Built of cells. Yes, all living things are made up of cells. And there's a couple more things. And also right here I said, I just Googled characteristics of life and went to videos. And there's enough stuff there that you could be watching forever. But like I said, don't get too caught up in this because honestly, it's a small section of this unit. But if you can do what's coming up on the next slide, pay attention to this because this is where we're going. I'm just going to go check the camera for 1 second. All right, so all organisms are made up of cells. Now, that means that even a one-celled organism, a tiny little organism, is still considered a living thing, even if it's one cell. And we're going to be learning about one-celled organisms quite a bit. Now, of course, we're made up of billions of cells, but cell is the basic unit of life. Levels of organization. That sounds a little complicated, right? But let's think of... let's use a nerve cell, right? Well, you can have all kinds of cells. You can have a blood cell, a bone cell, a hair cell, a nerve cell, all these kinds of cells. And then a group of cells of the same kind could be considered a tissue. A group of tissues working in one location together would be considered an organ. And a whole bunch of organs doing similar jobs cooperating would be an organ system. And a bunch of different organ systems working together would be an organism. Let's think about a nerve cell, right? So you could just have a nerve cell. Now you could have a bunch of nerve cells working together. You could have, for example, the nerves of your arm or the nerves in a certain part of your brain. They're working together. They're a tissue. Just the nerves going through your extremities together could be considered a tissue. Then tissues working together be considered an organ. What would be an organ of the nervous system? Your brain. Organ systems. Well, what kind of organ systems? This is where it blows up. You've got a respiratory system with all those parts that go from small to big. You've got a circulatory system. You've got a nervous system. You've got a digestive system. You've got all kinds of systems. And when all those systems work together, they make what we call an organism. All organisms use energy. Even the smallest cells use energy. Normally we try and convert things into sugars to use to create energy. All organisms respond to their environment. We talked about that one a little bit, but that basically means that whatever's going on in an environment, be it plant or animal, it can somewhat react to what is going around it to its advantage. All the organisms grow, remember that. So remember, get these 7 locked in your brain. All organisms reproduce. That means, wait, I don't have a kid. Am I not living? Well, no, but my species has the ability to reproduce. Think about it. So, the ability to reproduce and chemicals of life, and then we talked about that a bit with the complex chemistry on the last page, right? All living things are made up of similar chemicals, carbon being the real primo one, right? Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus or phosphates, those are the core elements of life. All living things are made of that. So I would pound this in your head. I would go over this a few times. I would think about it. This is coming up on a test, right? You need to know these. Now let's do a few practice questions. So on the Google Classroom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put assignment 1, characteristics of living things. I'll make that assignment. You're going to go and look at this right here. You're going to write, let me put this paper here. You can write your answer, take a picture, send it to me. How this would work, I believe right now, is you upload your pictures for that day to your drive, and then you go to submit the assignment and it says, what pictures would you like to upload? You just click the ones you did, and it'll be attached as an assignment that I can see. I know this isn't the most high-tech. I know that sending pictures of your work isn't the greatest, but I was required to make a paper version that people could use. Because some people aren't going to have access, and if things go weird or they don't have good Wi-Fi or they're on their phone, they could still do a paper copy and communicate and show work with me. So that's why we're doing it on paper for now. As we advance, maybe we're going to go all digital. But for now, we're going paper, and I like it because it's a good compromise of what we've been doing and where the future of education is going, honestly. So let's look at this. You're going to see that assignment. You're going to submit stuff. Let's talk. A garden pea plant forms flowers that undergo self or cross-pollination to produce seeds. These seeds mature in 2 to 3 weeks. Which characteristics of living things are being described here? A pea plant forms flowers, it pollinates, these seeds mature. It's like growing and reproducing. So let's go back. Made up of cells. I don't think that's what they're talking about in this question. Levels of organization, I get how you might be distracted by that. Using energy, no. Responding to their environment, not really. Organisms grow, organisms reproduce. Here we go. Chemicals of life, so let's go back. A garden pea plant forms flowers that undergo self or cross-pollination to produce seeds, so that is growing and reproduction. And these seeds mature, so I would say 5 and 6. Let's see. Use of energy? No. Growth and reproduction? You betcha. That's your answer. So circle that, attach that picture. You're going to send it to me on assignment 1, characteristics of living things. Let's look at number 2. Here we go. Here we go. Number 2. Oh, our old friend the pea. Let me check the camera for a second, but take a reading of this question. The picture below shows the different stages of life in the pea plant. Which characteristics of living things are being shown here? All right, so we've got little pea, gets a little bigger, gets a little bigger, gets really big. I think this one's pretty easy, but let's go back. Which characteristic of life would we be talking about? Are we talking about made up of cells? Not really in that picture. Levels of organization? No. Using energy? No. Responding to their environment? Not really. The leaves spread out as it gets bigger, but that's not really what we're going for here. All organisms grow. That's the one you want. So you're going to write number 5, all organisms grow in that paper. You're going to snap a picture. You're going to send it to me. Now the reason, interestingly enough, that we used peas is because when we get into our sexual and asexual reproduction unit later, one of the founders of genetics, Mendel, used pea plants exclusively. He basically figured out the whole introduction of what we know of genetics today through cross-pollinating and breeding different pea plants. So I figured you're going to be so sick of pea plant breeding as we go on, you're going to never want to think about it again, but I figured, you know what, let's put a pea up here. Let's get you acquainted with our old friend, because later on down the road, you're going to be learning a lot about pea plants. So this little plant is growing. Now the last question of the day. A plant's cells develop to form 3 types of tissue. Okay, this sounds complicated. The dermal tissue covers the outer plant surface. You don't really need to know what that even means, but cool. The ground tissue forms the plant's body, while the vascular tissue forms transport channels through the plant. Which characteristic of living things are we talking about here? So what are we talking about? Let's go back. Are we talking about organisms being made up of cells? No, well, they're already going on tissue, so we're already on the next stage here. Levels of organization. Oh, this sounds good because it's talking about this is a type of tissue, it's doing a job. This is a type of tissue, it does a job. This is a type of tissue, it does a job. This looks good to me, folks. All organisms use energy? No, because there's all kinds of jobs we're talking about. All organisms respond to the environment? That's not what this question's about. All organisms grow? No, it's not really in there. All organisms reproduce? No. And chemicals of life? No. We're not talking about chemicals, so if we go back, sorry, wrong way. Right there. We are going to be talking about, right here, I'll put it up there to make sure this camera's working on this lesson. I would be talking about levels of organization. I would be saying we're talking about different jobs of different tissues. That is showing purpose in the structure and in the levels of organization. We are looking at number 2. So you're going to write that down. You're going to write it in a full sentence. You're going to snap a picture of those 3 slides. You're going to attach them to the assignment. We're going to see tomorrow if everybody was able to submit that work to me, and we're going to check. So you're going to watch this. You're going to follow along. You're going to submit the assignments, and we'll see you on the next lesson here. I'd like to thank my friend, Mr. Rock. Thank you very much for being here. Stone cold. Well, thank you anyway, folks.